So there's an awful lot going on at the moment with the Nationality and Borders Bill, and there can be some confusion over why it's such a toxic almost debate on this. There are significant issues, and they're issues which are flagged not just by activist lawyers or do-gooders or left-wing wokies or whatever. They've been flagged by the government's own equality and impact statement. The government's own research has shown that this bill risks increasing discrimination, risks placing vulnerable people, including child trafficking survivors, at further risk. So we're not talking about some political match left versus right. We're talking about whether or not the UK is proposing to implement policy which would violate international law and put people at further risk. Now, this bill does both. What happens is it's creating a two-tier system for refugees. So those who enter by what the government calls safe and legal routes, resettlement routes which have been pretty much entirely closed for the last year and a half, thereby not allowing anyone through them, they can get a certain standard of protection as recognised refugees. Those who enter via irregular routes, such as crossing the Channel, get a lower standard of protection, and that clearly contravenes the Convention relating to the status of refugees. Very specific, you cannot penalise an asylum seeker for their method of entry, because it recognises that asylum seekers can't apply for a visa from another country. They can't always get passports and documentation that everyone else could get, and they can't wait around while they're actually still at risk, which is what's happening. We're seeing in Afghanistan that people are still left in Afghanistan, still placed at risk, and the government is no closer to setting up a resettlement route for them. So all of these issues combine to create this need for people to find safety, and they find it all over the world. Majority, though, in developing countries, because developed countries spend a lot of time and money on exactly stuff like this, of trying to deter people. Now, 86% of refugees in the world are in developing nations. We take a very small fraction. The UK takes a very, very small fraction. At the moment, it ranks about 17th per capita, per head of population, when combined with the EU. So we are already taking far, far fewer than a lot of the countries that we are saying should take more. So why are there people coming here? I mean, it's not the UK, much as this might surprise some people, is not actually the preferred destination for the vast majority of refugees in the world. But for those who do come, it has certain things that help them feel safer. Now, when you've lost everything and you've had to flee persecution, your perception of safety is going to be very different from someone who may just travel over to a European country on holiday, for example. You are looking for specific things, predominantly family ties and language. Now, those are the two main reasons that people cross, and they are not going to stop being factors for people seeking safety in the UK, no matter how high a fence you build round Dover. So it doesn't make sense to keep focusing on this idea that if we just send people back, if we deter people, because you're not deterring people. What you are doing is putting them at more risk, because whilst they are still looking to seek safety in the UK, they will continue to have to rely upon people to help them seek that. Now, you hear about the criminal gangs facilitating crossings in the Channel. A bit more complicated than that, because what we're actually seeing is an increase in what's known as self-facilitated social groups who perfectly legally buy a boat, perfectly legally set off from France, perfectly legally cross the Channel, and perfectly legally seek asylum in the UK. Where the gangs come in, there are smugglers and traffickers. Smugglers take a payment for a transactional journey. Once they've dropped you off, or normally they'll actually get another asylum seeker to steer the boat, so they're not even involved at that stage. That's it, done. They're gone. Traffickers will take their payment afterwards through exploitation. Now, when you return people, you make it easier for traffickers to prey upon, which increases long-term exploitation. It puts more people at risk and only benefits the trafficking gangs. Everybody wants to tackle the gangs, but you don't do that by creating a never-ending supply of human misery for them to prey upon. So this is why this bill is so dangerous. It will put people's lives at risk. The Joint Committee on Human Rights has already warned that the maritime proposals pose a real risk to life, including children. They specifically say that. We know that offshoring poses significant risks to the health and well-being of individuals, and the UK can't offshore at the moment anyway because nobody's willing to take any responsibility for setting up a facility offshore. So it's all just sound bites and political posturing. But if this bill passes, it gives them the opportunity to try, and that just puts lives at risk. It violates it, and it undermines the entire international refugee regime. You might hear this thing called first safe country. It doesn't exist. It has never existed. The closest you can get is in the Dublin regulations, which is where the EU states decide which member states processes an application. And it's the first port of entry, and it's way down on a list of hierarchy. One of the most important ones on that hierarchy for choosing the member state that processes applications? Family ties. So again, we are talking about people who are coming to the UK because they have family ties here. That doesn't change. So we cannot let this bill pass. If it did, what is to stop France then saying, okay, we don't want to take them, so the next country does, and the next country, and the next country, and the next country. It undermines people's safety across the world by setting a precedent. Precedent that a developed nation will violate international law and put lives at risk. It is that simple. I mean, all the complex arguments that we see, all the legal arguments, it is that simple. We are talking about a bill that specifically discriminates against people by the government's own findings, benefits traffickers, puts lives at risk, and violates the law. We have to stop this bill.